Hey team, Kurt Reichert here again, West Region Safety Manager at OTC. Welcome to the next installment of the OTC Safety Video Series. Today we're going to talk about the proper inspection of your fall protection body harness. More than a few times over my career, I've seen workers dig out a body harness out of the back of a truck bed or a gang box and attempt to put it on without so much as a quick look at its condition. That is a big mistake that could cost you your life. While we're talking about it, let's discuss proper storage and care. You should never leave your harness just laying around unprotected. Don't leave it out in the rain, the mud, throw it in the back of a truck or a game box, and then throw tools on top of it. Ideally, you would want to hang your harness up by the D-ring on a hook somewhere, but at a minimum, store your harness in a protective bag. A heavy trash bag will do. If possible, place it in the back seat of your truck versus the open bed where it can get damaged. Always do your best to keep it clean, dry, and undamaged. Next, let's discuss the ins and outs of actually inspecting your harness. But first, your body harness is to be inspected before every use. Not only is it a safe practice, but it's also a requirement by the manufacturer. Okay, let's get right into what we should be looking for during our inspection. Okay guys, let's get into the meat and potatoes of actually inspecting our harness. I always recommend do the straight face test, and that is look at your equipment, look at your harness, and look for the obvious stuff, the damage. I should be looking for webbing that's coming apart, any stitching. When I'm looking at overall, I should not see any burns. I should not see any excessive wear. I should not see any fraying, cuts, bird caging on the nylon, cracked metal buckles, anything of the sort. But generally speaking, this harness should look like it came out of the package. So let's talk specifically of the things we do want to look for. All right. The back belt, the back padding. Look it over, make sure the stitching is all intact. The loops are all intact, not ripped or damaged. Flip it over, make sure that the padding is in place and again, not coming unraveled, and it looks like it's in good condition. Okay, so these side hooks here are for body positioning. They are not for tie off. Okay, but they are important. So again, to inspect, look at the stitching. These red stitching that you see are shock indicators. If you pick up a harness and you're inspecting and these threads are missing and this curve is straight, that means this body harness has been shocked and it is no longer usable. You throw it away and you get a new harness. That means somebody has either damaged it or a fall has happened with this harness, and it's a one-time deal. If this thing ever engages, the harness is no good. You have to get a new one. Okay, so again, you want to go through and look at all your stitching, look at all the webbing, looking for, again, cuts, abrasions, chafing, burning, making sure that this is the main D-ring. This is where your anchor point will tie on, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Look at it sideways to make sure it's not warped. Feel for cracking. Take it like this and move it to see if there's any, you can feel any cracks or hear any cracking, but that should be one solid piece of iron right there. The webbing baskets also, you want to inspect those for any dry rotting, any cracking, any damage, just like you would with the shoulder pads and the like. So you want to look at every single inch of your webbing. Okay. And as you get down to the adjustment, same thing applies. Just like your D-rings, you want to look at your buckles. Ensure that your buckles are not broken, cracked. Another thing to really watch for in our industry is we have a lot of welding going on. So generally speaking, welders sometimes will receive harness damage from slag or other hot work like grinding. So welders especially should be very up on their harness inspections before every use. All right, so continuing on, looking at every piece, including our plastic. All right, every piece is important. That's why it's on this harness. So any missing threads, any bird caging, any burns, cuts, chafing, you cannot rely on this harness to save your life, and you would want to go get a new one. All right, on the, this is the kind of the seat that your backside will rest upon when you tighten up the leg straps. Leg straps are just as important as the rest of the equipment. In this particular one, this is a hole and buckle type. Very important to look at each one of your metal rivets to make sure that they're not coming out of the nylon. They're secure. They're not, again, broken, burnt, damaged in any way. Generally, if this thing is damaged, you'll see nylon frays coming out from around the buckle. And do not trust your life with that. Get rid of the harness. Do the same thing with the other side. Looking pretty good. So far, this harness is in pretty good condition. All right, so let's go over here and talk about, just as importantly, is the anchoring system that goes onto the D-ring. We're not gonna shoot putting the harness on today. That's going to be another video. But I wanted to talk about specifically, do we know this thing is safe to use? So here is our anchor system. This particular system is what we call a 100% tie-off system. This is a self-retracting lifeline versus a single lanyard. So how do we inspect this thing? Okay, first and foremost, your D-ring attachments. All D-ring attachments have to have the additional locking system on it, or it's not legal to use. So to inspect it, look down to make sure it's not warped from one side or the other. Inspect physically for any cracking. The rivets that hold the mechanisms on should be intact without any bends or broken metal pieces. Take it like this and hit your latch to make sure that it stays closed. This latch should only open once you engage the safety buckle, and then you can open it. That saves you from accidentally bumping your latch should you be tied off on something. So this has to be locked until you engage the safety button. Same thing with the other side. Check for warping, check for cracks, checking your divots, your connections, making sure it's locked. And that one looks pretty good. Lastly, on these ones, this one has a rubber protection to keep your wire rope connections clean and not to drag on things. So you want to pull that back, make sure that your clamps are all in good condition, tacked, no bird caging on the wire rope, and then make sure that you replace that protector ring. Okay, so how do we make sure that our self-retracting lifeline is working properly? All right, so generally when you're using this, the idea is that you can walk back and forth at a reasonable pace, and this thing will extend and retract like this. But to test it, give it a good yank to make sure that this thing will stop. So it should operate like this freely, and then give it a couple of yanks at different lengths to make sure that this thing is going to stop. If it doesn't stop, this thing is to be taken out of service and replaced with a new one. And as you do this, you're also inspecting the condition of your wire rope. Okay. So after looking at your body harness and your anchor, this fall protection system looks like it's in serviceable condition. Again, if anything is out of place, it's probably not safe. If it doesn't look right, don't trust your life with it. Okay, that's the inspection of our anchor system and our body harness. Okay, team, always remember that your body harness literally is your last line of defense against hitting the ground or other objects in case you fall from height. This harness, like other PPE, should be inspected, worn, and cared for as if your life depended on it, because one day it just might. Thank you, and we'll see you out on the next job.